about how they are looking into how Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa died. After his wife died of a rare contagious illness, he is said to have died of heart disease. A few weeks after they died, Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa were found dead in their Santa Fe home. This shocked everyone. The police look into it more and find strange clues that someone knew about their deaths before anyone else. Leslie Ann Hackman, his daughter, is now the center of attention. Did she do something much worse than everyone thought? Why did she hide something, and how far did she go to hide it? What they say might surprise you. The death that Hollywood was shocked by. Gene Hackman and his wife died in a terrible accident. On Wednesday they were found inside their Santa Fe home after a neighbor called the cops. The house was quiet. The door was only slightly open. The mail had been left outside for weeks without being opened. Someone in the neighborhood called the police because they thought something was wrong. Officers went to check on the person and thought everything was fine. They found something very strange inside. It didn't make sense how Gene Hackman's body was slouched over when it was found near the kitchen. His shades were lying next to him like they had just slipped out of his hands. He didn't touch them. The body of Betsy Arakawa was found in the bathroom. Pills were all over the counter. The water in the sink was gone, leaving a thin film. No one broke in or there was blood. There's no sign of a fight. One dog was dead in its crate while 2 live dogs ran around the house. Something went wrong. The bodies weren't brand new. The skin over the bone had gotten tighter. The breakdown was taking longer. It was time to begin mummifying. Gene and Betsy had been dead for weeks, the cops learned. The house's air was old and hadn't been moved in a long time. On the counter was food that had been gone for a long time. It seemed like time had stopped. There was one more scary question the cops wanted to ask. One of the people who did it was a Hollywood star. How did they get away with it for so long? It was an odd place where the answer came from. The last thing Gene Hackman's pacemaker did was saved. The information was checked by police. That changed everything. Gene may have passed away on February 17th. The house has been quiet for at least 9 days if that's true. No one asked for help. Not anything to do. There is no one coming in. Still, something didn't make sense. If Gene had passed out, why was Betsy in a different room? If she was still alive after he died, why didn't she call for help? It got more and more interesting. The door had a small hole in it. Was there someone there before the police arrived? Was that door supposed to be open? The results from the lab showed up. There was no too much carbon monoxide. Not a drug crash. Not a clear reason for death. There was nothing else to learn about it. The story changed when something new was found. Their records showed that someone had been watching Gene Hackman's house. The house had been watched for weeks before he died. Security cameras saw people moving. On the phone records, strange things were taking place. GPS tracking showed some strange patterns. Someone knew what had happened before the police got there. It was a surprise that the digital trail led straight to that person, Gene Hackman's daughter. The investigation's goal changed. What she said wasn't backed up by the facts. She said she had talked to her dad not long before he died. The phone logs showed that it wasn't true. There were problems with the money matters. The detectives did more work. They learned something even weirder. It wasn't just his death that was going on. It had to do with cash. Before Gene was found, his will and other papers had been changed. Someone tried to get his money before it was even proven that he was dead. There was strong proof. The case was not going well. Would you say that Gene Hackman's death was an accident? Or had someone been planning something bad before he was found? Special tracking 24 hours a day and the time of death. The case took a big turn when cops looked at Gene Hackman's pacemaker data. One last movement was caught by the device before it went silent. From the timestamp it was clear when everything stopped. On that date everything changed. After that day police looked for signs of life. They looked at what was on his phone. Don't call, text, or look for things on the web. The money things he was doing were stopped. There are no logins to banks or credit card payments. It looked like he had skipped away. They found something else after that. People were seen moving around outside of Hackman's house on security cameras on a nearby property. Near the door there was a shade. Someone left their car in the street for hours. Moving sensors inside the house picked up on odd behavior at odd times. But the front door was never opened. There was a look but no one was there. The cops looked at the burglar alarm in his house. Something bad was seen in the logs. The bell had been turned on and off several times before he died. Don't break in. Do not call the police or fire department. But something didn't make sense. Cracker did the same thing every day. He walked his dogs at the same time every morning. He took a look at his mail. He got paid. He had a very regular life that was easy to plan. Everything stopped all of a sudden. The cops looked further and found his most recent phone call, his most recent writing, and his most recent web search. All of them were over quickly. Not an alert or a goodbye. Then there was another sign. Cell tower data showed that close to Hackman's house there was a strange phone signal. The number wasn't recorded because it kept going from tower to tower, making it hard to figure out where it really came from. The signal showed up the night before his heart stopped beating. Someone was there. Someone knew what happened. Maybe Betsy should have called for help if Hackman was having a health issue. But there was no call. If she was still alive after he died, why did she not leave the house? Why didn't she tell anyone? The cops looked at her bank statements. There was only one small trade on February 16th. It wasn't very big or important by itself. We can now see that it was only a digital trace, a sign of life before everything went dark. Hackman and his wife both died that day. The real question was who had been watching them. The police tried to find someone who could get into the house. Someone who needs something. That's when they turned their attention to something else. Some people had doubts after seeing the records of the spying. They were going to be honest now. What did she hide? The daughter's part in it. At first it wasn't clear who Leslie Ann Hackman was. The strange timeline, the security video, and the pacemaker data had all caught people's attention. But the cops found something that changed the whole case as they looked into it more. The police said she had not talked to her dad in a few weeks before he died. She said everything looked good. There were no signs of worry or odd behavior. But cops didn't find any calls, texts, or anything else when they looked through call logs. Her father hadn't seen or talked to her in a long time, unlike what she said. What she said was not supported by the facts. The police looked at her bank records. They were ready for normal shopping and business deals. Instead they found something strange. Though her dad had died, she had already been talking about how rich he was. The law had been called into question. At a time when no one outside the family thought Hackman was missing, there were questions about his estate. The papers that had been changed were next. Something was looked at that had to do with Hackman's property. There were some big changes. The cops couldn't change the time. Things were strange even if these changes were made before February 17th. They were planned. The government started to inquire about tough issues. Did she know something that not everyone else did? Was she getting ready for something that never happened? There were even more red flags raised by what she did. She got angry when the inconsistencies were pointed out to her. Things got less clear about what she meant. She didn't understand why the calls she said she made weren't saved. The money deals that were linked to her name were hard for her to understand. After that, something else strange was found. Hackman's assets were talked over with a lawyer on the day that his pacemaker recorded its last beat. But at that point no one had said in public that he was dead. No one knew he was gone for so long. So why did someone move things around on his land? The time was almost up for her. If she was after his money, do you think she knew anything about his last days? Hackman's death was no longer the only thing being looked into. It got bigger over time. Cash, fraud, told lies. There was proof of more than just a terrible accident. There was more space between the walls every time something new was found. Things were beginning to make sense. The cops would soon find something that would change the whole case. Someone was about to tell a secret, and once they did there was no going back. The reports on the autopsy and toxicology. When the autopsy results came back, they didn't tell us anything new, they made more instead. Gene Hackman's body didn't have any marks on it that showed it had been hurt. There were no scars or broken bones to protect them. There were no signs that someone had hit him or that something violent had happened. The body of Betsy Arakawa is the same way. There were no scratches, fight marks, or other clues that pointed to foul play. The first thought that the person might have been poisoned by carbon monoxide was quickly ruled out. The police checked the gas lines, the airlines, and every other possible source of the leak. Nothing. The two people had not been near anything that could have killed them softly. Once that idea was thrown out, the detectives had to deal with something else. They died, but it wasn't because of direct damage or poisoning from the earth. The next story was about toxicity. Do not take pills. There were no barbiturates.